If you have a good gaming PC, you got to have a good gaming mouse. It's kind of like an unwritten rule. So today, we take a look at the long-awaited wireless gaming mouse, the Razer Viper V2 Pro. Now for starters, I do have to say that currently my daily is the Logitech G303 Shroud, and I've only had a brief chance with the Viper series, specifically the Viper 8K, for about 2 weeks to a month or so. So in terms of the Viper series of products, I'm kind of new to the family per se. But if you're a long-time fan of the Viper, the new Viper V2 Pro is going to look and feel really familiar to you, but yet slightly different in more ways than one. The biggest difference here, however, isn't anything visual, but rather the weight. Compared to the Viper Ultimate, which weighed in at 74 grams, the new Viper V2 Pro weighs in at a mere 58 grams for the black model, or if you have the white model like we have here, it's an additional gram. Razer says it's due to the use of the white coating and thus the additional gram, but well, it is what it is. Definitely still much lighter compared to the Viper Ultimate for sure. By this point, you might have already noticed what's different with the Viper V2 Pro, or to be more specific and more accurate, it's kind of noticing what's missing. What has Razer done to shave off all those grams? Well, actually quite a few. For a start, you lose any form of chroma RGB. So now, instead of a backlit Razer logo, you simply get a stealthy emblazoned black Razer logo. A nice touch in my opinion, and definitely a little cleaner looking. Next, gone are the two side buttons on the right side. So now, despite the symmetrical design, it isn't really a true ambidextrous mouse any longer per se. Moving on, we don't get rubberized grips on the sides any longer, and instead it's now just the matte plastic. But Razer does provide their grip tapes inside the box with every Viper V2 Pro, so if you prefer that feel, you can simply paste them on. But of course, this will increase the weight ever so slightly. Move to the bottom and you'll see a slight redesign of the feet pads, and instead of two separate buttons for the power and DPI toggling, it's now combined into just a single button. Lastly, gone is the charging dock connector, which some of you might be sad about, but I would say it's a blessing in disguise. Which brings me to all the upgrades that the Viper V2 Pro brings to the table, or the desk. The biggest and most welcome change is that the Viper V2 Pro features a Type-C port. This makes a huge difference in my opinion. Now granted, with the Viper Ultimate, you can opt to get it with the charging dock and it's straight to the point, no hassle, stress-free. You wouldn't even really be bothered that it still uses a micro-B port on either the dock or the mouse itself. But if you didn't get it with the dock, or perhaps you simply brought the mouse elsewhere and didn't bring the cable with you, which had to use Razer's specific cable per se due to the slotted design of it, you would be out of luck. Whereas on the Viper V2 Pro, it's basically a standard Type-C cable and you can basically use any other Type-C cable to charge it, or even use it wired if you so desire. You need not use Razer's specific cable, and with Type-C, it's so much more versatile. Because of this, if you're comparing and deciding between this or the Logitech G Pro X Superlight, go for this. Go for the Viper V2 Pro because there's just simply no comparison. Type-C is so much more versatile and you'll definitely appreciate it in the long run. But of course, that's not all there is to the Viper V2 Pro. There's more. You're also getting the newer Razer Gen 3 optical switches, which are rated up to 90 million clicks, and a new Focus Pro 30K optical sensor with a maximum DPI of 30,000. Now granted, practically no one is going to use that higher DPI, not even 20K, which was the highest possible on the previous Viper Ultimate, but it's still going to be a good sensor nonetheless, and in practice, it tracks well on a desk mat with no issues at all. Personally, I'm a high DPI user. I either use 9600 DPI or 12800 DPI, and yes, I use it for gaming as well. At least 9600 even in a game like Apex Legends. That's me, and I know I'm the odd one out, so I can appreciate high DPI capable mice out there, but what about you guys? What DPI settings do you all usually use? Let us know in the comment section down below. Lastly, you do get better battery life. It can last up to 80 hours of constant motion on a single charge, and it's great. I only had to charge it about twice a month or so. With this, it now has a slight edge over its direct competitor, the G Pro X Superlight, but still a far cry from the G303 Shroud, which has a staggering 145 hours of battery life. I only had to charge that about once a month, but that's a heavier mount, so it's understandable. The Viper V2 Pro is still no slouch. But ultimately, and again, the main factor and main advantage to this is the reduced weight. At just 58 or 59 grams, this is really light. You really do feel it once you start using it, especially for gaming. It's really light to move around, you don't need to use too much muscle per se, and in fact, I find that you will generally tend to get more accurate with your swipes and locks thanks to that. Over time, it's also less fatiguing as well. The Gen 3 optical switches are also pretty satisfying. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with the Viper V2 Pro, and I think that Razer has really nailed down on what's effectively a really competitive product in the market right now. But of course, it's not without its flaws. Compared to the G Pro X Superlight, the Viper V2 Pro does not have any compartment on the mouse to house the wireless dongle. If you're going to use this at your desk forever, that's not an issue. But if you're constantly traveling about, or perhaps you're an esports player or fanatic, not having a place to properly store the dongle is a little bit of a letdown. The thing is going to get lost really easily, so it makes this not that travel friendly despite the lightweight nature of it. But now, let's talk about the price. The Razer Viper V2 Pro retails for 230 Singapore dollars or 150 US dollars. To be fair, it's priced really competitively, at least when comparing standard retail prices. The Viper V2 Pro is basically 10 bucks cheaper compared to the G Pro X Superlight, which has kind of been held as a standard to beat since its launch. Of course, now that the Viper V2 Pro is out, I would say not to even look at the G Pro X Superlight unless you really prefer the ergonomics of that particular mouse. But even so, it's pricey per se, especially when you can get the previous Viper Ultimate for quite the sale right now. Honestly, I felt that Razer could have priced this slightly lower, perhaps at 200 Singapore dollars or about 135 US dollars. That price point would have made this so much more enticing and for more people to willingly jump ship. But even so, we can kind of understand. Even though you're paying more for less here, less is what you want. This is a fantastic mouse, and while it's not final mouse, it's still really light and you still get Type-C. If you're a fan of the Viper series, you'll definitely like this one. And if you're just in the market looking for a wireless gaming mouse with Type-C no less, this is it. This is the best that you can get, at least for now. If you have any questions, let us know in the comment section down below. If you'd like to, do check out the affiliate links in the description as well. If you do, thanks for the support. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok. Till the next one. See ya!